Video on the cardiovascular and respiratory system, and I have my work plan up on the computer. If I glance there, that's what I'm looking at. So first I'm going to talk about the cardiovascular system. So there is the heart wall, which is made up of several layers. There's the pericardium, and this consists of an outer fibrous layer and an inner fluid-filled membrane called the pericardial sac. This is filled with a fluid called pericardial fluid, which allows there to be no friction in the heart, and allows the membranes to glide past each other when the heart beats. And then there's the epicardium, and this is a membrane, and it hugs the internal surfaces of the heart. And then there's the myocardium, which is the muscle in the heart, made up of cardiac muscle, and it allows the heart to beat. And then there's the endocardium, which is made up of endothelium, and it aligns all of the heart's chambers. And then valves in the heart allow blood to flow in one direction. And so some valves, there's the bicuspid valve, and this is made up of two cusps of endocardium, and then the tricuspid valves are made up of three cusps of endocardium, and these are anchored to the walls of the heart by these things called cord tendineae, which anchor them and prevent backflow into the atriums when the ventricles contract. And then arteries carry blood to the heart. In some arteries, there's the brachiocephalic trunk. This brings blood to the arms and the head and neck. And then there is the left subclavian artery, brings this oxygenated blood to the left arm. And then there's the right carotid artery, supplies the head and neck with oxygenated blood. And then the pulmonary trunk brings deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs. And so there's the left and right pulmonary arteries, which bring this blood to the left and right lungs. And then there's the veins, and these carry blood to the heart. And so then the superior vena cava, these are where all the veins from above the heart come together and drain into the heart. And the inferior vena cava is when all the veins from below the heart come together and drain into the heart. And then there's the left and right pulmonary veins, which bring blood from the left and right lungs to the heart. So then now I'm going to talk about the pathway of blood through the heart. So first, blood comes from veins in different parts of the body and enters through either the superior or inferior vena cava, depending on where the blood's come from. And so then first the blood enters through the right atrium, and then it passes through the tricuspid valve, then it goes to the right ventricle, and then it goes to the pulmonary valve, which then brings it through the right and left pulmonary arteries, which carry it to the lungs. So all this time, this blood has been deoxygenated, but then when it enters the lungs, a gas exchange occurs, and the blood becomes oxygenated. So then it travels back to the heart through the pulmonary veins, and then it passes through the left atrium. Then this time it goes through the bicuspid valve, then it goes through the left ventricle, and then it passes through the aortic valve and goes to the ascending aorta, where this blood is brought to all parts of the body. So this is the pathway of blood through the heart, and basically how our heart pumps blood. So now I'm going to move on to the respiratory system. So there's many structures in it. There's the trachea, which is your windpipe, and it's made up of C-shaped rings of hyaline cartilage. And then there's the larynx. This is your voice box, so it plays an important role in speech, but it also routes food and air to the proper channels. Then there's the pharynx, and this is the long muscular pathway where food and air passes through. And then there's both the mouth and nose are places where air initially enters the respiratory system. And then there's the epiglottis, and this has an important function. It protects the opening of the larynx, and so when you swallow, the epiglottis moves over the opening of the larynx, and this makes sure that food or liquid doesn't pass and go to your lungs. It separates these two passageways. So if I swallow, you can see the movement is my epiglottis that's passing over this opening. And then the lungs, the air passes to the lungs in something called the bronchial or respiratory tree. So this is made up of the largest branches called the bronchi, which are larger tubes, and then these branch off into smaller branches called the bronchioles. And then these branch off into even smaller parts called the alveoli, and these are tiny air sacs where the gas exchange occurs, where carbon dioxide is, where oxygen is turned into carbon dioxide, which is a toxic product, and then it is exhaled out of the body. And then there's muscles in the respiratory system that allow it to function. There's the diaphragm, and this is the muscle that separates the chest from the abdomen. And when it contracts, it increases the size of the thoracic cavity, which is the cavity where your lungs and heart are, that's enclosed by your ribs, and this allows the respiration to occur. And the external intercostal muscles are muscles in your ribs, and also your internal intercostal muscles are muscles in your ribs. And these also allow respiration to occur because there's no muscles in your lungs, so these muscles are very necessary. So then the lungs, these are the paired organs that are made up of all the bronchioles and alveoli that I talked about, which allow respiration to occur. And there's some structures in them. They're covered in an outer membrane called the parietal pleura, and it's attached to the inner surface of the thoracic cavity. And then there's the visceral pleura, and this covers the surface of each lung and protects it. And then there's an important substance called pleural fluid, and this fluid allows there to be adhesion from the parietal pleura in the outside of the thoracic cavity, and so this adhesion allows it to stick to this thoracic cavity, and when the diaphragm and intercostal muscles contract, this is what allows the thoracic cavity to expand or contract when breathing. And if you didn't have this, then your lungs would collapse. And then there's the pleural cavity, and this is the space that I was talking about where the pleural fluid is contained. So now I'm just going to do the pathway of air through the lungs. So first air enters through the nose or mouth, then it passes through the pharynx, goes to the larynx, then it goes to the trachea, then it goes to the bronchial tree where it goes to the bronchi, then the bronchioles, then the alveoli where gas exchange occurs, and then now in the form of carbon dioxide, it just goes back through all the places that I said before, so the bronchioles, bronchi, trachea, larynx, pharynx, and then exhales as carbon dioxide through the nose or mouth again. So these that was the respiratory and cardiovascular system.